Little example of what they did for several months before, at the end of the day, Grace Sparks ended up dying by her own hand, shooting herself with a revolver. Let's bring in our guest this morning, forensic psychiatrist and body language expert, Dr. Carole Lieberman in Los Angeles. Good morning to both of you. Carole, when you get inside the heads of these two, you're dealing with an age difference, about 8-year age difference, and she clearly had suicidal thoughts beforehand. She, if you believe her Facebook, conversation there, how vulnerable was she to something really bad happening and to be coerced by this older man?
She was very vulnerable. She was basically an accident waiting to happen. Clearly, to say that she had daddy issues is that's really an obvious situation, because first of all, she would say to him, yes, daddy. She referred to him as daddy. Then she was also on the daddy baby website, where she met her boyfriend, who she was living with. And it's so sad. I think the major thing that really upsets me about this case is that I know they both said that they tried to be in therapy of some sort. We don't really know what, and that it didn't work. They were dealing, and they also, it was brought out that they both were abused. He was sexually and physically abused. It wasn't clear how she was abused, but sexually, clearly, from how she's been acting, if not physically as well. And these are things that people can and should go into therapy for, see a psychiatrist, a psychologist. These are things that it does take time, because they were obviously suffering a lot of abuse and trauma, but clearly this is not the way to work out their problems. And so she was very vulnerable, and it really, the whole thing was just very confused. They were confused. Reading the messages to the jury, I think, was very confusing, because really it was hard for any reader to know the intonation to put with what they were saying, because it was a very complicated scenario. The feelings were very complicated, and it's hard for anybody to know how to say the lines in a way that really was reflective of how each of them were feeling.
Carole, his reaction to her reporting that she attempted to take her life the night before seemed genuine. What did you pick up on that? And then in context to the overall allegation here that he's the one that pushed her over the edge and wanted her to kill herself while he was watching.
I don't think he did want her to kill herself, because he needed her. He said, I need you. And I think that was very real. She was, I don't know how many, other supports that he had, friends or, it seems like he really did need her attention, needed to know that she cared about him. So I think he did mean that. Each of them what they were doing it was fascinating, from a psychiatric point of view. And it's so interesting talking about that neither one of them, to my understanding, had expert witness psychiatrists, which I think could have been very helpful. But, what they were doing was acting out their own childhood scenarios of both being the victim of abuse and also identifying with the aggressor, it's called, identifying with the abuser. So they were acting out that scenario with each of them. Sometimes they would be towards each other. Sometimes they would be the victim, and sometimes they would be the abuser.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre look into their world before her death. Coming up, that last entry from Berkebile, after she's dead, he goes on and he seems to be documenting this for others, knowing that this is going to be analyzing, saying, I said no, no. How incriminating is that?
I mean, yes, it could be for that purpose, for his defense that he anticipated later on. It could also be that he really was, distressed. It's interesting that this came after he said that he wasn't going to be able to be with her. it seems like maybe there really was a part of her that was very upset by that, and that's what made her ultimately go through with it. It's so funny though, because it really wasn't. It didn't seem like that big of an escalation that she would then pull the trigger in this conversation, as compared to lots of other ones where they talked about dying and him killing her, and so on. It was rather benign or anticlimactic after all of these months of conversations.
Yeah, interesting. My gut is like, oh, he's doing that because he's covering his tracks, but both of you disagree, and it's a good point. And you see a lot of times when something traumatic happens, people still communicate with whatever form they had to communicate with the individual who has passed. I want to thank Carole Lieberman for her valuable time. Melissa's going to stick around.